For EOS to work, for what I do to work, right? The people that I work with, you have to be open and honest. You have to be willing to be vulnerable, and you have to be more willing to change. You have to be more afraid of the status quo than you are of change, right? And so I don't care what it is you do.
Welcome to the Your Message Received podcast. And now, taking your message to the finish line, your host, John Duffin.
Hey folks, John Duffin here with Duffin Media. Welcome back to another episode of Your Message Received. Your Message Received is the home, the place, the platform to help you find your best, most true, authentic business voice. Heck, maybe it's just your own true, authentic, best voice. Get what you want, find what you need, improve your results, make billions of dollars, meet the person of your dreams. Those last two, I'm pretty certain our guest today will make happen for us. He doesn't guarantee that, but I'm always hoping for that angle as well too. So with that being said, I get to bring on first and foremost my dear friend and also the professional EOS implementer at EOS Worldwide, Garth Reid. Welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks so much, John. Great to be back here with you.
It's absolutely awesome. I like I said, I'm biased because I'm your friend and I get to watch fun things happen. And I'm also fascinated in regards to business evolution too, in regards to paths and journeys. So the last time I was sitting in a coffee shop with you, we were talking about paths and direction and that sort of thing. You've made a switch, you've made a change in regards to what you get to be able to do. And I would love to be able to talk to you because I don't know what the word implementer means. And I'm sorry, my research is typically better than that. But if you would guide me a little bit in terms of how your story is unfolding, I'd be very grateful.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's I love having these conversations with you and especially look back and see what both our respective journeys have been. So as you mentioned, I'm an EOS implementer, which means I work with entrepreneurs and their leadership teams to basically help them get everything they want out of their business. And we can talk about what that means more later, but to kind of explain to you how I ended up here, because I'm very, very happy here. This is just a really great fit. I was, if we go way back, I've been an entrepreneur all my life, right? I mean, started my first business when I was 11, mowing lawns, Mr. Park's old poultry farm back in Altoona, PA, right? Mr. Park's had the farm wasn't running anymore, but that was my first client, mowing his vast fields.
Mr. Park with his poultry.
Absolutely. Park's Poultry Farm. Yeah. There's probably, I don't know if there's a Wikipedia page on that or not. We can look it up.
I'll find one.
But, totally. Right. So age 11, starting a lawn cutting business, when I was 15, I started a ski and snowboard waxing shop out of my basement, primarily just to pay for lift tickets and eventually gas in my car so I could make it to the local mountain on weekends. I may or may not have made some bootleg T-shirts in college to sell to freshman dorms. Nothing I want to overly admit to, but just that entrepreneurial spirit kind of just always kind of coursing through me. And even after college, when I graduated, and I ended up at a very large Fortune 100 company right here in Philadelphia. There was always some kind of side gig, some kind of side hustle. I mean, my history. I had a technology consulting company that I did on the side, which we used to talk about a lot. In my early 30s, I had the opportunity to start coaching and mentoring young men recovering from drug and alcohol addiction. And throughout a much longer story than we have to get into here, but through that service work, I eventually found myself as the COO of a growing drug and alcohol treatment provider here in the Philadelphia area. And the founders of that company and myself, we made up a 4-person leadership team. We implemented EOS, right? The entrepreneurial operating system into our business. And we saw prodigious results, right? I mean, we had 80% revenue growth year over year, 3 years running. In 2023, that company was actually awarded by Philadelphia Business Journal as one of the 76 fastest growing companies in the greater Philadelphia area. They had an awards that was called the Soaring 76. And we were the 13th fastest growing company in the area. And it was right around that time that I realized for me that once everything was running smoothly, I mean, we were humming, we had grown, we had expanded. I get bored, right? I mean, that's just my personality type, right? So I had a conversation with those guys, and they were awesome, you know. And after having some talks with them, I realized I had this idea to go, and you know, my passion is in that journey, right? And so I realized that I could actually start my own practice, helping other entrepreneurs experience that same journey and kind of bringing some order to their chaos, right? Helping them get everything they want out of their businesses. So, you know, with the help and blessing of those guys, I left that company and started this EOS practice.
Which is a damn big commitment. Folks, backstory, right? So you could do as much digging as you want, but the good parts are this. Garth also happens to have, as part of his family dynamic, 2 additional of my favorite people in the world. Garth's wife, Betsy, first and foremost, and their son, which I just thought of when you were talking about skiing and snowboarding and all that stuff like that. Not only that, but golf prodigy. And it's amazing to me to watch your family, first off, who I love to death, but I love the way it embodies in your son, where he's taking some of the habits that you were great or are great with and already embodying them. As a coach, we will say, for, in addition to being a dad, what's it like instilling habits that matter to you? And what's it feel like when you realize it also matters to him?
That's great. You know, I think there's a couple things I try and keep in mind. I heard a professional recently. There's a great speech where a gentleman talked about how we don't get to engineer our kids, right? And I'm not that powerful. We can shepherd them at best. Right. So I can't, which is probably a very good thing. I can't engineer my son. But what I can do is I can show him that I have passion for things. And what matters more is not what he's passionate about, but just that he has passion. Right. Maybe there is a genetic component to the entrepreneurial bug, because at 5 years old, last fall, he started his own ice cream truck business
at 5,
right? So at 5, well,
nice.
So he's ever since he was 2, he's been a huge fan of the Mr. Softy trucks. Shout out to Mr. Softy, originated in Camden, New Jersey.
Who is
it? Right across the river. So we have a Mr. Softy truck that comes around the neighborhood, and the weather's getting nice. I'm sure he might even be by later today. My son became fascinated with this idea. To the point where he had up the large, 3-foot big toy ice cream truck. And last fall, he got the idea that he could hook a Bluetooth speaker up to his iPad and play the Mr. Softy music. And then convinced his babysitter one afternoon to take him to the local grocery store and buy some miniature cups, vanilla ice cream cups. And the kid just started pushing his ice cream truck. The first day, he literally went around, gave out free samples, and then started charging the next day. So, for him, it was just, he still barely grasped the concept of money, which is great. He certainly kind of did. Right, back then. So just this idea of starting this, I don't even like to say the word business, right? Starting this venture, right? Of going out and doing this thing, and to just foster that and encourage it. And it's really special. But I think I'll come back to that idea of, I don't care what he's passionate about. I just want him to find passion in whatever that is.
I love that. So the follow-up really has more to do with your realization of the sense that, oh, this has taken. You used a word that isn't Sherpa. I'm throwing that word in from a book that I read. When you're able to guide someone and you see the results in terms of that, you've got a number of examples from the past of where you are guiding people. What's it like when you realize it's taking? Not necessarily in regards to how it makes you, but if you're looking to, in essence, help somebody in sometimes the most personal of ways, let alone professional, when did you realize that that really mattered to you?
Um, I've tried to be helpful all my life, and I was fortunate to be raised by parents. I mean,
Mhm.
mom was a nurse, and dad was in advertising sales. But throughout my whole life, dad's always contributed to a number of nonprofit organizations, volunteering at different places. I mean, he's in his mid 70s now, and he goes to the VA hospital to volunteer and help care for vets, 3 days a week in his retirement. Dad's a Vietnam veteran himself,
Wow.
and likes to just give back that way.
Mhm.
So, I was definitely raised in that environment around helping others. Something that I'm very public about, and I'm fine with talking with, but I'm
Yeah.
actually in long-term recovery from drug and alcohol abuse myself. I got sober, almost 15 years ago. And, without going into tons of detail, obviously when I hit that bottom, that low
Mhm.
point in my life, there were a lot of people there that were there to help me, that
Mm.
helped pick me up,
Mm.
and in every facet of the word, physically, emotionally, spiritually, professionally. And one of the things I learned very quickly was that you have to give it away to keep it.
Mm.
You have to give it away to keep it.
Mhm.
Um, nothing will change a dark and gray day quicker
Mhm.
than calling somebody up and just saying, "Hey, how you doing? How's it going?" Right? Like, just to get out of my own head.
Mm.
And so at a very kind of primal or base level of doing that in that environment,
Mhm.
that just further ingrained that. And then as I continued in my recovery and my life, I don't even want to say got put back together, but really was completely reborn or rebuilt.
Mhm.
um, it made me realize that those same concepts, they apply to everything, right? It's not just to helping people with a debilitating, disease like substance use disorder, but
Right.
I mean that the same thing happens in business,
Mhm.
and I got friends in all different industries, right? I got friends in real estate. I got friends that are artists. I have friends that are tradesmen, right? Executives, tech people, whatever it is. There's pretty much always a way that you can help somebody with
Mhm.
something, if even just being a listening ear, and helping them. And ultimately, it's a weird thing where it's like being selfless can almost feel selfish because
Yeah.
how good it's going to make you feel,
Mhm.
when you do that. And I think this new journey that I'm on now is just an extension of that.
That's why I asked, because it feels that way. Folks, as you probably know a lot of my story, there are so many connecting links between Garth Reid and me. And one of them, myself being in long-term recovery, we wouldn't know each other.
Yeah.
Maybe we would. Maybe we would, because I actually responded to a Facebook post in regards to a technical angle, which is another way that we cemented the relationship. But it's pretty unlikely that we would have if it wasn't for the long-term recovery and service angle, right? And so I'm
100%.
can't even say in correct words how grateful I am, not just for the gift, but the fact is for the friendship of Garth and myself. But I'd also say that you saw things. You've always demonstrated that propensity. You've got certain skills that, in terms of being able to be patient, to listen, that I got to watch. But I will ask you this before we continue. You said you got bored in terms of setting up the other structure, right? So when did you know that it was like, okay, I'm going to, like, I'll ask it better. When did you realize that I'm going to make a move as opposed to just I'm going to just stay in? Like I know a lot of people in my life that have done that because they feel like they should just stay in a situation whether it's based on fear or based on the unknown or whatever. When did you know that it was going to be okay for you to make the move?
Sure. Well, those are a couple different questions, right? I mean, I think the hardest part of making the move is that lack of certainty that it's going to be okay,
Yeah.
right? Any big change, I can hopefully, humbly say when I realized I had to think about this change, it was actually um, due to an uncomfortable conversation with the CEO of that company I was at. And I was COO. And to be completely honest, some things were falling through the cracks,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that caused me to really um, do some deep diving on myself, right? So not to go way too much into backstory, but
Right.
when I was in college,
Mm-hmm.
halfway through my college career, I was diagnosed with a moderate to severe case of ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having troubles academically. Just the challenges I faced in college weren't really present during high school, and so suddenly I had these challenges, and I got this diagnosis from a clinical professional, and was using some medication to help manage that, and that was great. Um, Embarrassingly, I abused that medication during my addiction, amongst others. And so when I got sober, I made a decision for myself, and after talking to my primary care physician, to stop using that medication. Right. And so then I continued for about 13 or 14 years without that. And the CEO, my friend of the company I was at, came to me, and it was like, "What's going on?" Like things are falling through the cracks. And what I realize is that's part of my personality, that when everything is smooth, I lose focus, right? I lose that attention. And so we had spent, it wasn't, and by all means, it wasn't me that did all this stuff, right? It was the people at that company.
Right.
And we got these processes in place, and we got structure, and we got things running smoothly. And that's just, it was a hard pill for me to swallow, because I had envisioned myself as a COO, this operations person. But once the operations were running, it was really hard for that to hold my attention.
Yep.
So it was this CEO coming to me and pointing out, and then he asked me a very poignant question. I was there were these three founders of this company, and they were fantastic. I was blessed. They brought me onto the leadership team. But my friend said to me, he goes, "Are you ever really going to be happy without having your own business?"
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I loved that company. I loved working there, and I think there was part of me that probably unfairly thought I was more of a founder of that company than what I really was. And so, thank God for good friends and tough conversations.
Right.
Because at the time it was a tough conversation of like, I thought I'd kind of found my stride and hit my place. And it was that tough conversation for somebody to be like, "I don't think this is the ultimate spot for you."
Mm-hmm.
And that question of like, "Are you going to be happy?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, no question about money, salary, payment, like happy.
No, you're not going through job evaluation. You're literally going through a deep personal question.
Yeah.
I think this matters so much because, like, look, I'll speak for me personally, which is when I left corporate, and it's close to 5 years now. And the way that things have morphed for me from that point, I never in my life thought I would leave corporate. I never thought that. I just felt like I finally found the right fit, and I gave it a great ride. And whether it was the arrogance, the ego, whatever, I can remember personally for me, I knew something was wrong and something needed to change, because the things that made me so happy about what I didn't anymore. And it wasn't because so-and-so said something, or you're now this, or it was none of those things. But the things that gave me such a rush, the travel. Travel is one of my favorite things in the world. Like getting energized from it until you don't. A big success really matters until it doesn't. So that's why I'm saying I know you and I aren't alone in regards to those sorts of things. People hit walls because you just use the choice of words that I want to amplify, which is this your ultimate, which is a really, I was about to say unfair, but I don't like that sort of word. I was going to say is an unfortunate example, because how would anybody know what their ultimate happiness is going to be? Right. So I think it's a lot of pressure to be on. Like, is this the ultimate? So I asked that because of all of the people, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm grateful to say, pay attention to this program. A lot more people have taken risks in the past where they felt like they couldn't, and so therefore they do. So I think what sets you apart, at least personally to me, is you're willing to take the risks. And so that is what excites me. I like the fact, as I go through your bio, your now current experience, that you consider yourself, again, and I'm repeating the words, a facilitator, a teacher, and a coach. Which one of those things to you came the most naturally, and which one of those do you felt like is one of the things that in what sequence was it like, oh, I'm here because I am a great which of those three?
Sure. Probably teacher, coach, facilitator, in that order.
Okay. Right.
You know, I mentioned about the opportunity, the mentoring opportunities, that I had, and just love that on multiple levels. One, I think one of the best ways to make yourself better at anything is teaching other people. Right. I mean, I was a snowboard instructor in college, and it sounds counterintuitive, but one of the best ways to make yourself a better snowboarder is teach a couple of fourth and fifth graders how to snowboard. Right. It brings you back to those basics. So for me, the teaching, quickly followed by the coaching, came the most natural. And then the facilitating as well. The facilitating, which has been good for me, is facilitating involves a lot more listening. And, no surprise to you, John, but I love the sound of my own voice. And so
we would compete.
God bless any third person trying to be in a conversation with you and I. But that facilitating, but I'm almost most grateful for the part that I've had to grow the most in. So that facilitating of really practicing my active listening, because I'm a big believer in the idea of work-life balance, right? And that's a big part of why I'm doing what I do as well, because there's certain non-negotiables now in my life for being present with the people I care the most about. But learning to become a better active listener with my clients, because it's my livelihood. I like to think, and you can ask her, but I like to think has made me a better husband.
Right?
Made me, he might not know it or not, but hopefully it becomes apparent, make me a better father, a better neighbor, a better friend. And so being able to work on that aspect, the facilitation aspect of really enhancing that active listening has been, it's been a real blessing.
That's exciting to me. By the way, when you say, and it made me a better listener, I could feel myself like, don't talk, John, don't talk.
It's how we're wired, brother. It's how we're wired,
I think it's how a lot of people are wired. And that's not a shot at anybody. That I think my God, when you throw yourself out into a completely new experience at any age, whether it's 5 years old navigating ice cream trucks, or if it is at any age. And I especially admire when somebody does this after an element of success. And to me, I think they're the really gutsy moves, because they don't all work. Garth knows my story intimately well, and also knows the fact that Garth set up all the equipment, literally all the equipment, for me as I sat acting like some damsel in distress while we were talking to somebody in a box on a Zoom call. God bless you, George Whittam. And Garth is lugging these big, heavy boxes that I just kept clicking order and received. And my business has morphed and evolved. And I say that because if I had to have made that singular thing work, I don't know that I was going to. I don't know. Maybe. I always ask the same thing, which is when you are for you, Garth, when somebody that's naturally like instinctually maybe more of a stick and move type rather than a just stay in a situation. What's it like now that you are navigating your own ship, so to speak? And obviously you get help within the structure, but how is it when it's like, okay, this is your show? What was that like when you first walked in, and what's it like now?
It's fantastic. I can tell you, my wife likes to joke. The first year I launched this practice, I said, I've turned down more golf in the first summer working for myself than I ever turned down working for other people. Because I am the discipline, right? The discipline begins and ends with me. Mm-hmm. But there's also the excitement. There's also the challenge. What's great, one thing to take a quick little step back. We were talking about the last company I was at, where I thought I had found my seat, so to speak. It wasn't. What I've since realized is what I got confused with was the people at that company I still love, right? Mm-hmm. It's not past tense. Mm-hmm. Love those people, the clinicians there, the administrative staff, the founders. Like, I was getting up and going to work and being surrounded by people that I just enjoyed being with. Right now, of course, we butt heads every once in a while. Like, you have to have confrontation. There's, otherwise there's no progress. Right. But I enjoyed these people. I enjoyed spending time with them outside of work, right? Not at just forced, axe throwing events, which big proponent of axe throwing events. I was just talking to a client. I was on the phone with a client an hour ago, and they were telling me all about theirs. And I'm like, send me pictures. I think it's great. But you know what I mean? Like,
I totally do.
Not that forced thing where I just genuinely enjoyed those people. Mm-hmm. And it was the actual work, right? Was what was not the right fit. We have a term in EOS when we talk about being in the right seat, and you have to get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it. You have to have all three of those things. Mm-hmm. And that particular seat, I didn't really want it, right? I didn't want it because it's just the way my brain works, right? And so I was with all these great people, but I didn't really want that seat. Transition to now, like, I love this seat. And just as great, the types of people that I'm interacting with are all very similar to very different industries, but very similar characteristics and traits to those people I loved at that company, right? Because for EOS to work, for what I do to work, right, the people that I work with, you have to be open and honest. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And you have to be more willing to change. You have to be more afraid of the status quo than you are of change, right? And so I don't care what it is you do, what your industry is. Those are the traits. Those are the type of people that I'm looking for. And what's great that I love now is my days are just filled with meeting those types of people and seeing how I can help them, whether it's with EOS or not. Right? Like, some people like, hey, I'll call you up. Like, you're not going to become a client, but I love calling you up and be like, hey, John, we got this great tool, right, that we use in EOS. And I think you would find this just beneficial. Can I, do you want me to show it to you? Right? Show you how it works. So,
like the book, for instance, literally like the book that I'm a proud owner of, that you got to do that with me. And so it's for myself, that's a beautiful way, in essence, to I think sometimes there are great litmus tests of ways that are you in the right fit. By the way, I also think that the variety, you talked about this being an industry agnostic sort of a way that you are able to be a facilitator. That to me is fascinating in that regard. You talk about a help first attitude. What happens after the help part? What's second?
Well, it's funny. So the outcome will dictate that. So help first is actually, it's one of the core values of EOS Worldwide, right? So we have 5 core values that EOS Worldwide, and it's be humbly confident, grow or die, do the right thing, do what you say. But the first one is that help first, right? And so this kind of goes in line with what we were talking about 10, 15 minutes ago, where it goes the whole way back to recovery of I'm a true believer, and I don't even know if believe is the right word anymore, because I've seen it happen so many times. It's just factual for me.
Advocate, maybe?
Yeah, where like if you just help others, like the universe, things come and work out.
Right.
Rarely exactly how I think they're going to work out, right? But they just do work out. And so, by just leading with this notion of help first, right? I want to help you with something. And it might not even mean that you hire me to help run your business, right? I help you with the tool. I help you listen to a problem you're having with your neighbor, right? Whatever that might be, to just help first, that forms the connection, right? And so that's just where I like to start. I mean, a good day for me, yes, it might be a new client, right? Or it might be a great client session. But a good day for me, I spoke with a colleague yesterday who is dealing with some mental health issues, right? Having some mental health struggles, and I had been in contact with this person a couple of weeks ago and shared a little bit about my past experience with the substance use disorder and whatnot, and I called this person yesterday just to, how you doing, right? They can't become a client. There's no financial upside for him. It's just a, hey, how you doing? And they were going through it a little bit. And we talked. I called for a 5-minute call and ended up being 40 minutes. And we both left that conversation with, for lack of a better term, with our cups full, overflowing.
Love it.
Just starting that. And then, just I found when I keep that mindset, that help first mindset, the rest kind of takes care of itself.
I think that's critical in regards to keeping you and or anyone that's following along on the path, whether it is clients and or colleagues and or whatever, to keep them going. Of the core values, what are you finding experience-wise? What are you finding to be the most, in addition to help first? Like, what are you finding is there a need for in regards to, I don't mean client specific, I mean in general, as you get to, in essence, share your story, share the company's story. What are you finding that's missing that you're able to, the holes that you talk about, full cups? What's it like? Like, where are ways that you're finding where you're able to help a company fill their cup?
Sure. I think, all 5 of them are applicable. Do the right thing, but especially, that often pairs nicely with do what you say.
Okay.
Right. So there are 2 different values, right? Do what you say and do the right thing. Now, hopefully you're saying you're going to do the right thing and then you go do the right thing. But just integrity, integrity matters. You and I, we have an old friend from way back in the day, and he taught me a lot. He was an early mentor of mine. He taught me a lot about, personal integrity and accountability, and it starts with you. So, in terms of business, I think it's what I instruct my clients with, and where I see my clients having success is you get more value of being honest with what you're going to do and what you're going to deliver, and then doing that and delivering that. right? It doesn't benefit anybody with fake promises, false hopes that, well, I think we could really do all this. And like, if you know that, no, we can't do that, right? You can't be all things to all people. And so let's focus on what we're really good at, what we do best. Let people know that this is what we do best, and then we just go do that. That's really important. Then the other thing I think that's I really like the grow or die
Yeah. Well, that's
mentality, right?
intense.
It's
But
right.
anyway.
Yeah, right. I mean, we've heard similar things, right? We've heard things like there's no treading water. You're either going forward or backward.
Mhm.
Um, and that idea of just always trying to get a little bit better. And it doesn't have to be monumental, right? You don't have to go get your MBA right now. If that's the goal, then by all means, right? Good luck on the GMATs. Go get that MBA. But um, that concept of like there is no stagnation, there's no standing still, and I think there's a lot of noise out in the world, and there's a lot of times where we just want to turn stuff off. And I'm a big proponent of turning noise off. I recently removed the news notifications from my phone. Because I realized they weren't serving me properly. The distraction, because anytime a news notification popped up on my phone, it was never good news.
Oh,
I mean,
and I would laugh if it was.
Right, the
So,
fear-mongering clickbait. I read the news. I like to stay informed. I
Right.
read the news when I need to. But so turning off some of that noise that doesn't benefit me, and then, okay, I only have so much time.
Mhm.
What can I do to just get a little bit better today? And again, it doesn't have to be crazy, rigid, structured, adamant. Some people that works for them, but keeping, I tell my clients that too. When we work on things, we talk about big, long range goals, but then it boils down to like, what do we got to do the next 90 days, right? Like, let's just focus on the next 90 days. What's the most important things we can do next 90 days, make this company better, right? Grow or die.
So I think you're reminding me of the sense that the word that comes to mind when is intentional as opposed to reactive. And when you were talking about the news notifications example, where that's what it is. So that there are so many traps, and I'm not pointing fingers. I have fallen prey to a lot of them. And when I'm working with clients, that it's like that comes up is that loss of control is so often because it's becoming more difficult to be intentional. And so I love the fact that you're talking about just that sense of being able to be a little more proactive, coaching people, teaching people to be a little bit more proactive would speak volumes. I actually have a question for you in regards to the EOS model of the dynamic. You had brought up earlier the part about is like the right seat. And you talked about yourself personally in regards to you having that ability to know, is this the right seat, or having a tough conversation with someone that planted the seed. In the model, in the EOS model, you talk about people within organizations and the right people in the right seats. I would imagine that's something that becomes very prevalent. How do you see that in regards to, I would say, your ability or the model's ability to be able to give somebody the sense of freedom to make those sorts of moves, to make certain the right people are on the right seats?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You mentioned that, and I believe the stat is 85% of the companies that hire an EOS implementer like myself,
Right.
people issues are their number one issues that they're dealing with.
Okay.
Right. I was with a prospect today, talking to them about our process, and during that meeting, I asked them, what are your three biggest challenges? And the woman didn't even give me a chance to finish my sentence. She said people. Right? People issues. It's very, very common, right, in hiring. And so we talk about right people, right seats. That's a concept. Jim Collins wrote about that in Good to Great. And we say you got to have both, right? You got to have both. And for us, right people, we define that as people that really embrace your core values.
Okay.
Right. So the core values, we say, are a guiding set of principles that define who you are and what you want from the culture of your company. So right people are people that embrace your culture. Right. They're just, you love having them around the office or around the job site or whatever it is. They're great. Those are right people.
Right.
Right seats are those are the people that are really good at their job. Right. They have the God-given talent or the genetic encoding. This is where I talked about the get it, want it capacity to do it, right?
Give me that again.
Get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it, right? So get it meaning I just get it. I understand what this job is. I understand what it needs. I understand what it entails. Want it, I get it, and I want to do that. And then capacity is about, do I have the learned or the required skills and experience to perform that job?
Okay.
So for me to be in the right seat, I need all three of those things. I have to get this job, I have to want this job, and I have to have the capacity to do this job. To be successful with your company, you have to have right people in the right seats. Right. And so we'll talk about situations where, the two problems you can run into is you can run into the right person, wrong seat. That's, you got somebody, you love them, they're great, they fit your culture, good to have around the office. They're just not, they're not the best at their job, and so we work with, our leadership teams of a lot of times what you can find the right seat within the organization, right? They're in the wrong seat. We can find the right seat. We can put them there. The other problem you'll run into, and this is something I think a lot of people struggle with, and I've experienced this myself. I've been on leadership teams where we've had this, where we talk about wrong person, right seat, right? Where you have the person, they're great at their job. They crush it. They're hitting their numbers, their metrics, whatever it is. They're really great at what they do. And they're killing you from the inside, right? They're toxic. They're eating away at your culture like a cancer.
Right.
And it's so hard. It's one of the scariest things I've seen in business, both, directly myself with companies I've worked at and with my clients, where there's that fear of like, well, we can't replace them, right? They're so good at what they do. And it's a really short-sighted thing, because I've experienced it and I've seen companies take significant hits because their culture gets eaten away by having the wrong person there, right? And not even to say that person is wrong or bad, they're the wrong person for that company, right? One company's set of core values, what they value the most, doesn't make them right or wrong. It's just what makes that company that company. You can find a completely different company where they have a completely different set of core values, and that person might be the right person for that company.
Gary Vee talks about that often in regards to that cancer that you talked about from the inside. So in a world where a cliche is often, I can't find the right people, or I put out ads and I can't get anybody to do so they wind up just keeping the status quo. When you come in and make an assessment in the very beginning, which is a much broader base than simply that, how does it work in terms of, I'm going to ask in regards to the priorities when you're having conversations with businesses? Is it simply you're listening and then assessing the priorities based upon the conversation, the needs of the companies, and the solutions? Or is it based from the model? How does it work for you in a business assessment?
Right. So when I start working with a new client, we always say the answer's in the tools, right? And that's really what EOS is, right? EOS is a complete set of simple, practical tools to help people get more out of their business. And so when I start working with a client, we have a set of foundational tools that we start to work on. We always start on these foundational tools, and it's for a reason, right? The Gino Wickman, the gentleman who invented EOS.
Okay.
He already did all the heavy lifting in the fact of pulling all the levers and all the different orders. And so we know the right order to pull those levers. And so when we work on those tools, one of the very first tools we work on is a thing called an accountability chart. And the accountability chart, without going into way too much detail, it's similar to an org chart. But what's interesting about it is you also identify the 5 most important things that seat does, that seat is accountable for. And what we do is we do structure first, people second.
Mm-hmm.
We remove everybody from the company, right? So on that day when I'm sitting there around a leadership, a conference table with a leadership team of 6 people, I say, okay, you're all fired. None of us work here. We're going to build the structure of this leadership team as we need it for this company, not as we have people for. And so the first thing we do is we build out that structure, right? Starting with the leadership team, and then we cascade that down. What is the structure we need? What are the seats we need? And then we do some work around the core values, right? So we know what are the right types of people we need. And then we take that information, we make sure that we have the right people in the right seats, or we then use those core values in the hiring process. Right? It's amazing how much, and this probably answers your original question. I apologize for being a little long-winded. I love this stuff. It's amazing how many people, I'll even talk to a prospect and they'll say, well, I really want to do this, but there's just a couple more. We got to hire the right, the 2 more right people. And once we hire these people, then we want to go ahead and start with EOS. And I'll say to them, I go, okay, great. What system are you using to make sure you hire the right people?
Yes.
Deer in the headlights. People don't have a system, right? We go off of gut instinct, emotion, feel, and there can be more. Yeah, of course, ego. That's one of the other components we talk about is data, where we help our clients use data to make decisions rather than the thoughts, feelings, emotions, and egos that often drive decision making in entrepreneurial businesses. But so to really encourage people to use their core values to hire.
Right.
And the big thing with core values that was surprising me to learn is core values aren't something you choose for your company. They're not something you design. They exist. If you have a company and you have an organization of people, there are a group of core values that already exists within that organization. And we have to help you uncover what they are. And then once you uncover them, then you can kind of share them with the world. And properly identified, core values will not only help you attract the right people, almost just as importantly as they'll repel the wrong people. Because we know that repelling the wrong people, and I'm not saying bad people, I'm just saying the wrong people for your organization.
The wrong seat or whatever, right?
Repelling the wrong people is almost more important than attracting the right people.
So you've got, I would wonder, for a company, you just described a great example. As soon as we get these 2 more positions filled, we'll be ready for you. And you're countering with the leadership team and everyone's fired and we're going to build this, from literally the ground up and what have you. What do you think, based upon today, is the reason that people would drop their guard, so to speak, to allow you to, in essence, build from rubble? Have you seen any? Are there specific reasons that people would give in regards to when they have the willingness to allow somebody to help them build from the ground up?
Yeah. I think a lot of it, whether they know, we use a term called hitting the ceiling, right? And a lot of times people hit the ceiling. And they might not know that that's what happened, right? But they've hit a ceiling. I've taken this company as far as I can take it. A lot of the people, the clients that I work with, they're entrepreneurs, right, in spirit. And so entrepreneurs are not afraid of hard work. And so they're running at 120, 130%. And we all know, like, that's just not sustainable long term. And so, I said that the people I work with, they need to be open and honest and vulnerable, right? And if people aren't willing to admit that, of like, all right, like, I've hit a ceiling, I need help of some type, right? Like, and not like the world is falling down, I need help, but more the like, I have a vision to take this company to this level. I alone cannot do that. Right? There needs to be something. A lot of the clients we have are people that are phenomenal at the service or good that they offer.
Right.
And so that's how they started their business. Most people, they start a business doing something they know and they're really good at it and they love it. And that's why they are willing to dedicate the amount of time and energy and resources to it. But eventually you hit a growth point where you can't just do that yourself anymore. And so that being open to change, being open to, we talk about, one of the biggest things that I help teach, leadership team members or executives is to delegate and elevate. Like, you got to learn to let go of stuff. And for people that have started a business from the ground up, it's a very difficult thing to do, to start letting go of things and let other people do it. But if you want to grow, if you want to go to that next level, you absolutely have to delegate things.
So I will ask you for this moment, just two more questions for the moment, which is one of these things, which is, so now from a family perspective, I love when you had said earlier, in essence, that work-life balance is really important, but you've given up more golf this summer than you have at this point. How, in terms of being a participating member of a family with a child, what are the things that the gifts that you have learned so far that would help that make you a better leader, in essence, or just a better participant within your own family?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of what attracted me to doing this was the freedom to set a schedule. Travel as much or as little as I want. So I do have I have a couple travel clients that allows for the amount of travel I'd be willing to do. I'd maybe do a couple more, but I'm not looking for a full roster of living on airplanes.
Right.
The do what you say that we talked about.
Yep.
Right. This job allows me to do that with my family. Right. And that might be, or that is going to be in 3 hours picking my son up from school. If I don't have a client session, so I work out my schedule and I book my client sessions with obviously a little bit of advance notice. If I don't have a client session, I have that flexibility. We had a little childcare snafu pop up yesterday, and then I had to go pick them up at 2:45 in the afternoon. I was able to go do that. I mean, for me, that's a blessing, right? Not only a blessing logistically, right, because it helps my wife when we're not struggling and where we try and call somebody,
right,
but like, I got an extra couple hours with my son yesterday. I was talking with somebody earlier today with a client, and we were talking about work-life balance.
Yeah.
And work-life balance versus salary or compensation. And somebody said, what's the value of your kids' Little League games? Right? What's the value of your daughter's dance recital? Right? To be able to attend that is what I mean. It's and maybe this is part of having kids a little bit later in life than typical, but just being blessed with the perspective of knowing what I find to be really important to me, and spending that time with the people I care the most about. That's a big part of why I'm here doing what I'm doing.
That makes me feel so happy. Talk to me about, you've got an event that you are proud of that's happening on the 24th. Talk to me about that a little bit, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So doing a webinar on one of our tools. It's called the EOS Time Management Tool of Delegate and Elevate. Okay. And it's a 1 hour webinar. Going to do it on the 24th from 11 to 12. And basically, the EOS Time Management Tool, it's like everything else in EOS. It's a simple tool, and you don't have to be running a business on EOS to take advantage of this. It's actually one of my favorite tools in our toolbox specifically for this. And really what it is, it's a simple way that I help people identify, kind of, first of all, identifying everything you're doing. And then identifying, okay, of all the things you're doing, what should you be doing? What shouldn't you be doing?
Okay.
Right. And this is just as applicable to a CEO as it is a busy parent on the weekend. You know what I mean? Like, so much of us, I think culturally, we live in a constant go, pack the schedules, do everything we can. And a big part of this comes into what we just talked about this idea of delegating things you shouldn't be doing. So we're going to take an hour to just kind of talk about this concept, not related to an industry, not even related to profession, but a way of just, if you find yourself being driven and overwhelmed by your to-do list, this will help. Right? It's completely free. It's just kind of a neat thing. When I started sharing it with clients, it was effective. And then I started sharing it with friends, talking about with a buddy on the golf course, and guys going, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like, even, guys talking about this weekend, I got to do this and this and this and this. And I'm like, but do you really have to do all of it? Maybe there's somebody else to do some of it. Does some of it maybe not need to be done? I don't know. So we're going to dive into that. It's going to be a short, easy, casual, fun 1 hour on Zoom, just to hopefully help people, get a little bit of their time back. Our good friend Jack used to always say, time is the only thing I can't get more of. Right? I can make more money. I can lose everything, all my material possessions, and I can buy it all back. Time is the only resource that I can't get more of. And so the idea behind time management is just realizing how to maybe better manage what's probably the most valuable commodity we actually have.
So, folks, the great part here is the link is in the bio, so you don't have to fish very hard in order to register. But I would imagine, just for the gift of a little bit more time, a free admission with only an hour time commitment seems to be a reasonable thing to ask. Garth Reid, I'm thrilled that you showed up for me today. Obviously, we got your contact information. We've got your webpage. What is the best way to find you?
So the best way would be that website that you mentioned, or shoot me an email. You can connect with my information all through the website. You can find me right there. There's some call to action buttons. You can schedule a free 90-minute meeting to learn more about what we do if you're interested, or just call John Duffin. He can give you my number.
Boom. We can do all. And I gleefully accept calls on Garth's behalf. Folks, you know that this program is all about your arc to authenticity, and one of the most authentic and best friendships I have is with my friend Garth Reid. So Garth, you of course made my day, and I am eternally grateful that you're in my life and that you offer help so freely and you make it fun. So thanks, man, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy. I love you, John. I appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to many, many more of these conversations, not necessarily recorded, but just around a cup of coffee at Bluestone,
either which way,
fixing whatever piece of technology is currently on the fritz in the apartment.
We're overdue. But the fact of the matter is I love you too. And folks, you just heard another episode of Your Message Received. Keep liking, watching, sharing, and we will keep driving content through your front door or back, whatever works. John Duffin here at Duffin Media. Thanks so much for checking us out. Have a great rest of the day, and we will talk soon. Bye.
And now, making its way across the finish line, Your Message Received has been a production of Duffin Media.